The world has seen a frightening trend that does not show any signs of slowing down. Following one of the greatest refugee crises in modern history, as well as 3 horrifying terrorist attacks in the heart of the European continent, there has been a significant increase in the power of far-right ideologies, not just in Europe, which is most affected by this series of events, but throughout the Western world, from greater support for politicians and political parties that state the obvious dangers of letting thousands of undocumented people inside territories of organized countries, over relatively peaceful protests by nationalists against the Islamization of the West, to bigoted, hateful, and sometimes even violent demonstrations by hooligans and neo-Nazis. Citizens of Western countries show major disagreements with current immigration policies and ever-increasing hostility towards people of Islamic faith. Demonstrations are certainly a valuable part of a democratic society, as they are the way for people to regulate those in power. The problem occurs when people try to find simple solutions to complex issues. This is almost certainly the case with the rise of far-right radicals against Muslims. Considering an increased frequency of terrorist attacks performed by Islamic extremists, as well as the frightening ambience they create, it is definitely to be expected of citizens to try to defend themselves by any means. It is an innate reaction, a consequence of fear for dear life. But is it justified? 3 of the most recent terrorist attacks in the European Union were performed by its own citizens. Brother Sharif and Saeed Kouichi, attackers on French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo's editorial, were both French citizens. When it comes to the Paris terrorist attacks that happened in November of 2015, 5 of the executors of the attack were French citizens. 2 of them were Belgians, and apparently only 2 of them were refugees, according to passports found near their bodies. However, officials responsible for the investigation have stated that both passports were counterfeited, so they remain unidentified. 2 identified attackers on Brussels in March of 2016 were both Belgians. The problem with anti-refugee rhetoric is that most of the people responsible for terrorist attacks were not refugees. It is possible not just to stop waves of refugees currently entering Western countries, but to deport those who have already entered. The latter will eventually happen, as many European countries are already planning to deport immigrants from non-war-torn countries. It can be done with first-generation refugees, but it cannot be done with European citizens. However, many far-right radicals think it is not enough and that we should deport Muslims in general, as their culture is opposite to Western values. We believe that a generalization of any type can be dangerous, especially to such an extreme where people compare members of a religion that has 3 times more believers than there are citizens of the European Union with extremist groups that have mere thousands of followers. It is dangerous and wrong. We should take into consideration that the victims of terrorism around the world are mostly Muslims. According to the United States National Counterterrorism Center's 2011 report, in cases where religious affiliation of victims of terrorism could be determined, the number of Muslim casualties could be as high as 97%. This type of data is lacking in later reports, but considering that most terrorist attacks happen in predominantly Muslim countries, we could conclude that the state could be similar today. Let us ignore this for a moment. The question arises, will right's anti-Muslim rhetoric solve Western problems? It is not very certain, but it could create more problems. Instead of asking ourselves whether we should send people fleeing war and violence back to the horrors they are trying to escape, we should ask ourselves, what makes ordinary European citizens embrace extremism? In Europe, the majority of Muslims living in the most populous cities are staggered across poor districts with high unemployment. They are marginalized and stereotyped, often associated with terrorism, even though most of them are innocent. With the increase in frequency of Muslim terrorist attacks around the world, this is more emphasized than ever. These people, without jobs and general purpose in life, often turn to crime and find solace in religion, becoming far more susceptible to any form of religious indoctrination. Afterwards, Islamist groups just need to implant their ideas. Why should we think that segregation is the answer when segregation led to this situation? It would surely take time, but why don't we involve more of these people into economic and social processes? Many Muslims have already shown the willingness for reformation of their beliefs. We should encourage them in that process. We should help them understand the value of multiculturalism, the very basis on which Western civilization was built. Education should be our primary goal, not segregation, bigotry, hate, or violence, because hate creates more hate. Radicalism creates more radicalism. These negative trends happening throughout the Western world will certainly radicalize more Muslims and create at least a handful of Islamic extremists. The problem with radicalism of any type is that it focuses solely on extremes, while the truth always lies somewhere in between. If radicalism continues to grow, there will be a critical point. If we cross it, it will be dangerous for the future of the entire civilized world. We certainly believe it is our duty to stand for and defend virtues of civilization. We can only do it by love and unity, the greatest virtues we have. If you like this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more of our content.